Musk.
The way this works, Gen, is they probably only heard "fuck Elon Musk," which is
understandable, to be honest.
we don't disagree. Fuck the guy. He's
I
a
mean,
dumbass.
that is an
Good
evergreen
old
statement.
Clyde.
I mean,
Anyways,
he's
welcome everybody to the Paradox Hour.
Yes, welcome back to the Storytime Network. It is the Paradox Hour, special Thursday edition, because we are talking about the MCU and specifically the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It has been what? How many years?
Several.
Two since this one came out. Almost exactly. I think it came out like April or May of 2021.
March 19th.
Oh, dang. So this is around the time that it ended 2 years ago.
April 23rd.
Look, if
Close
nothing, we are very prompt.
Not sure.
I mean, go ahead, Mel.
I'm not sure if we'd done any MCU streams by the time this was streaming, and even if we had, we were only on like phase 1.
Yeah, I've been taking our time going through the MCU stuff, to be honest.
Unlike, the MCU.
It's funny because it's true.
Decided to shit out a TV show or a film every like 4 months.
I think Devil Dinosaur and Moon Girl is good.
I need to watch more of that. I've heard good things.
Again, you said you didn't watch anime anymore.
I've heard good things. I said I haven't watched it.
Is that even
Touché.
really part of the MCU though? I know it's Marvel, but
I
like,
don't know if it's
technically-
canon,
It technically is. Until
The only-
proven otherwise.
The only definite animated show in the MCU is What If.
which is funny because it's also the most non-canon one.
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah, we're on Phase 5 now. We're still talking about the second entry in Phase
4.
4. So, we're very prompt about this, yes.
Yes.
I still maintain that, well, we know Disney are cowards.
Yes.
We know this. We take this fact to be self-evident.
Mm-hmm.
What is even worse about this particular one in terms of cowardice?
Well, let's first
They
describe, before we get
okay,
into our
fine.
opinions, let's just describe what the show is.
Mm-hmm.
The show is essentially about the passing of the torch that happened at the end of Avengers Endgame, where Steve Rogers or Chris Evans says, "Fuck it, I'm out. I'm gonna be an old man now," or
And also, allow millions of people to die in various natural disasters.
and also be a rich asshole trying to kill a Mexican, some Hispanic girl for an inheritance from Tom Plummer.
Wait, what?
Lost me there.
I'm assuming that's a Knives Out reference?
Yes, thank you, Bill.
Yep, I knew he was in Knives Out.
That was good.
So yes, it's about the passing of the torch. The torch being Bucky Barnes' attraction.
That's like more true than anyone will ever know.
I mean this
because Disney are cowards.
I mean this is a fucking
Yeah, no, 100%.
comedy.
With a Nazi thrown in for good measure.
Yeah. Because look, the big selling point of this show is the chemistry between
And before we get into the other opinions, Anthony Mackie, Sebastian Stan, excellent actors, doing their fucking best.
Again, like the chemistry between them is the selling point of the show. Nobody gives a shit about the actual plot by the end.
Though they do give a shit about a couple other characters, namely Zemo and his funky dance.
He does have a good dance, and also I had no idea that particular meme was about Barry Manilow. I thought it was actually like something serious.
No,
Well, okay, no. Barry Manilow is very serious business. I apologize for even
yeah,
insinuating that.
it's serious
It's not.
fucking business, obviously.
But like, just
But now that we've and like the show really like we'll get into this, but the show is about legacy and what does it mean for there to be a passing of the torch and who gets to own legacies and who gets to receive those torches and then the ways in which intent is twisted by powers that be or by the people who are interpreting them.
Yes. There is also an
About
underlying
interpretation.
theme of racism and such that kind of gets a little bit abandoned here and there throughout the show.
Yeah, this
Which
is
is
What do you
unfortunate.
excuse me? Am I muted?
No.
no.
Okay.
You're just coming in funky every now and then.
As funky as Zemo's dance.
It's the mouse trying to silence me.
But I mean, look, we already had Mario just enslave someone, so
Excuse me?
yeah, you didn't hear about this? Side topic. Nintendo.
The Gary Bowser incident.
Yes, yes.
Which
Nintendo
is
has.
somehow even more tragic because his name is actually just Bowser.
Yes, he is a third Bowser. He was part of a group, like I guess a piracy group. That
It's the worst part. He was just the PR. He wasn't even the PR guy. He was the equivalent of like the retail worker.
yeah, he is the front desk. And
Yes, which makes it
Nintendo
so much worse.
Nintendo threw the book at him. I think in the order of several $1 million. I believe the full fine was like 10, $20 million.
That's not really the worst of it because fines have ways of like.
So he
you
was
can get out
jailed.
Of the...
He was jailed, and his wages are garnished 30% on top of that. And
yes,
so,
that is the real like.
And he is
human
50.
rights violation.
And he is 50.
Sheesh.
And so by the time he gets out, any work that he does in prison will go towards his, obviously goes towards the fine, but that will only count for like maybe $100-$200. And then on top of that, because he's now a former felon, work will be severely limited. He'll have no access to any kind of real money-making career, and therefore he is saddled with this albatross of a debt that will just haunt him into death.
That's fucked.
And will also haunt his family and those that he leans for support and so this is why I'm very angry at Nintendo. Continue it. Anyway, moving on. Speaking of another absolutely fair and balanced organization, the U.S. government. The series opens with Sam Wilson kind of contemplating, the nature of the shield and like the symbology of it and like what does it mean for a black man to be the symbol of America, to be Captain America. And that is a very interesting question that I feel like the series doesn't do a lot of. Doesn't do a lot of asking.
Yeah, because it would require some degree of, I don't know,
opposition to, or criticism rather, of the U.S. government. Which
right,
there is some of that, but they do it too lightly, I think.
Well, they can't do it at all. Like they really can't, because they need the U.S. military on their side. Like Disney as a whole needs the U.S. military on their side to continue shooting Marvel movies.
Mm. Or at
or
least anything that has the military in it.
correct. And then on top
Wait,
of
what's
that,
that about? Is that the case?
So
if you
basically,
want to use
the U.S. military allows you to use their resources so long as you portray the military in a mostly positive light.
so that's why like the Transformers movies, um, like Horizon Zero Dawn, um,
You mean Zero Dark
Olympus.
Thirty?
Yep, that's the one. Olympus Has
Yes, Horizon
Fallen.
Zero Dawn. Oh, I thought you were talking about Horizon Zero Dawn.
That's very different. No.
Like all of those are meant to portray the military in a positive light because that is the only way they can use and access like
Actual
military
hardware, yeah.
Yes. And also that's why COD is the way Call of Duty and Battlefield are the way they are, because they can't otherwise they can't use symbols and imitations of military insignias without being pro-military. And Disney is also burdened by that restriction.
It's really
Well,
fucked.
I wouldn't say they're burdened by anything, really.
Well, of course not. But like, if there's any force more powerful than the mouse, it is the military-industrial complex.
Correct.
And the only reason that's the case is because
The mouse doesn't have a military.
Not yet,
Yes.
anyway. I mean, look, Pepsi had one. Pepsi had a navy, so you never know.
I mean, doesn't Disney have like counterintelligence force or something like that?
They
Yeah,
have
but
lawyers,
it's for
yes.
finding out if someone that breaks their copyright rules.
It's mostly corporate espionage.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of multi-billion-dollar companies. I work for a big pharma. I'm not going to say which one. Absolutely sure. I'm pretty sure I'm like interacted with someone who is a corporate spy. I am 100% sure.
my condolences.
Look, it happens. You work for something this big, you're bound to run into it.
But yeah, back on the topic. That's part of the reason why most evil military guys in modern media are portrayed as individual bad actors rather than beneficiaries of systemic corruption or anything like that. Because otherwise, that would paint the U.S. military in a bad light, and that is not allowed.
Again, it toes that edge, but it never actually goes all the way into like, wow, yeah, this is fucked up sort of thing. Like it toes the line with
Walker.
With Patriot, yes.
not just him, Eli Bradley.
Mm-hmm.
Toes that line there.
With his backstory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Toes that
With
line.
Val.
Yeah, toes that line with John Walker's backstory, but not Eli Bradley, Isaiah Bradley. Sorry.
Yes, Isaiah Bradley.
Yeah.
And I mean, that is a.
I mean, Elijah Bradley's backstory does get the closest we ever get to like outright criticizing the U.S. government.
Well, so but
again, they can get away with it because it's in the past, so they can say, "Oh yes, this government was bad, but we're not like that government. You know, this government isn't like that anymore."
Isaiah Bradley is very specifically a Korean War veteran. So like Korean War, Vietnam War, and that is generally accepted, at least within the modern parlances, to be when the United States military is at its most corrupt.
Yeah, especially Vietnam. Like
Vietnam is famously like the one era of the American military people are allowed to criticize.
Yes. Well, that and the Civil War for the most part.
Yeah, that's debatable these days. But
Sadly, yes.
like getting to I guess like the meat of the issue, we can talk about this a bit more, but like the show really tries to tee up, like really put at the forefront this issue of the way black people, black bodies, have been treated by America, and in the past and in the modern day, and pretty much throughout all of history, both whether or not they are war heroes like Bradley and
Sam.
Sam. Yep, I was going to call him Anthony Markle, and I was like, that's not his name. That's not the character's name. And like,
Yeah,
the
Sam's
way
an
that
outright Avenger, and he gets denied a loan because he was poofed for 5 years.
right, and like, this is the ways in which being black in America does not, like, even being exceptional and black does not prevent you from facing the systemic issues of racism.
Again,
Right.
Sam is an Avenger. He's not one of the ones who's, he's not like fucking Iron Man with his entire face covered. It's pretty easy to tell who he is. He gets stopped by the cops.
Yep.
Because all cops are bastards.
Yes, fuck cops. ACAP. But the
Funnily
idea is,
enough,
like,
on one of my delivery routes, I pass a nursery where there is an ACAB sticker on the sign.
love that.
And nice.
Like, full anarchy nursery. It's great.
That does sound pretty rad.
But like, this idea of, like, Isaiah Bradley is the poster child of what it means to be black in America pre the civil rights movement. Like, pre, like, any kind of equality, like, movement for equality post Civil War. Like the American Civil War, not Marvel Civil War. Where, black people are still, like, they may not be property, but they're not much better.
They are treated as second-class citizens, yeah.
I mean, part of, like, why interracial marriage, like, took so long to get abolished, or like not abolished, to get legalized. Yeah, that's was because it was seen as bestiality for white women.
Which is all kinds of fucked.
Right? Exactly. And then, like, you have, with Isaiah Bradley, I don't remember if Isaiah Bradley is part of the comics or not.
He is.
He is.
He is.
But, like, part of this character's, like, history and what they're referencing is Tuskegee. They're referencing Tuskegee. They're referencing...
Oh, Jesus. That is... We'll not discuss that in detail on the stream, but I would recommend looking it up if you are comfortable with some really fucked up stuff.
And, like, the ways in which black bodies have been denied
modified and
humanity, like, they've been denied humanity, and, like,
I
black
mean,
people
there's
have
a lot
denied...
of that. There's, like, that happened. That wasn't an isolated thing. There was also MK Ultra, which did it a lot. There was the one. There was an entire series of medical studies.
I mean, HeLa cells. The entire existence of HeLa cells.
I was talking about the one syphilis study.
That's
Tuskegee.
Which went on for 40 years.
Oh, that's what you were talking about? Okay, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
40 years Tuskegee went on. Which is insane.
Yes, and then, like, HeLa cells, which were unfairly taken from the dead body of a black woman who had cervical cancer, and then became the basis for pretty much the entirety of oncology and the modern understanding of oncology. And her family was not properly compensated, nor did they properly consent to it, because, again, this idea that black people are not allowed to have ownership or personhood over their bodies.
And that idea is very, very, very tentatively explored in this series, but it does not dive that deeply into it. Which is unfortunate.
Like, Star Wars does a better job of this. And that's saying something.
Yeah, Isaiah Bradley's parts in the show are probably the show at its best in terms of actual thematic content.
That, and also, like, the first episode, like, the episodes in which Sam and Bucky are interacting with Sam's sister, and like going to the cookout, helping on the boat, doing all of that. Like, that is setting a tone for this series. And it's such good tone setting that the rest of this lets down.
Yeah.
Because it cannot help itself to be Marvel.
And
On the
unfortunately,
subject of not being able to help itself being Marvel, how do you feel about the whole...
John Walker thing.
No, the whole Sharon Carter thing.
Oh God! Don't
I
even
was
get me
annoyed.
started. It
Okay.
was very annoying.
No,
I mean,
but like
it's-
the reason I say can't help. You're aware of what the
Yes.
Marvel thing right now is, right?
What specifically? The gaslight geek girl boss bullshit?
Well, no, the fact that it's currently doing Secret Invasion.
Oh yeah, no, she is 100% replaced by a scroll.
Yes, so if it's not character assassination, if the original character it's not the original character.
I would not
So,
be shocked if that reveal came in Secret Invasion. To be honest,
I feel
it
like
would be
that's like,
it would be worse if they didn't make that a reveal.
yes, I'm not worried about that reveal happening. I'm worried about that reveal not happening.
Mm.
I mean, it's fundamentally like we've already gotten, essentially confirmation that Nick Fury is a Skrull at this point. He's
Yes,
been
but he's
replaced
one of
by
the.
some point.
And I hate the fact that I'm even going to use this phrase. He's one of the good ones, though.
Yeah. I mean, look.
Well,
the
this-
Kree, the
We
Kree Skrull.
we should. Well, let's not get into the scroll stuff too deeply because that's not what the series is about.
The Kree Skrull. Let us say the Kree Skrull War is just a whole level of horse shit, even in the comics. In fact, it's even more so.
Look, it's one authoritarian empire against another. There are no good guys there.
It's almost like it's like Gundam. Anyway, continuing. Weird how that keeps popping up in fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like it's somewhat reflective of reality, huh?
Weird. But and like the other driving force. I mean, we mentioned Sharon Carter. There's this whole undercurrent in the series about espionage, weaponization, kind of the traditional like secret agent horse shit of someone selling secrets. We need to work with a Nazi to get at who's selling secrets.
And are we considering Zemo to be the Nazi in this situation?
I don't really
Yes.
think MCU Zemo is really a Nazi compared to
Yeah.
But like
I feel like Zemo.
he worked for Hydra.
He, from what I recall, he very loosely worked with Hydra compared to his comic counterpart.
I'm pretty sure they changed up a lot of things for Zemo in his in the MCU.
Yeah, he's not really super affiliated with
Hydra.
it.
I honestly just think of him as a Nazi just because Zemo is Zemo.
Yeah, in the
he's-
comics, he is a straight up Nazi, so you're not too
He's-
far off base, to be fair.
He's Sokovian. Okay. Whatever.
Hey, that actually does. Well, he's a rich Sokovian, which is a different connotation. But like,
money.
Again,
He's
like
old money.
Sokovia does.
Uh,
Yes, go ahead.
I mean, vaguely Eastern European, post World War II, kind of hitting at like Eastern Bloc.
Yeah, so he's more Soviet than he is Nazi.
Well, he's more, yeah, like I would say.
I mean, you
he's-
could say he's like an oligarch almost.
Yes, that is 100%.
That seems a little bit more fair to his characterization and at least the version in the MCU.
Yes.
Which, he's still a bastard, don't get me wrong, but like, he's not a
He's
Nazi
by no means
bastard.
a decent human being at all.
Yeah,
Not by any stretch of the imagination. He's just like there are degrees of evil.
yes.
Latveria. Sorry, I saw like Latvia in a sentence, and I was like, that's Latveria.
Sorry, what?
I saw a sentence in an article I was trying to pull up, and I was like, I cannot remember if Doom is from Latvia or Latveria.
Latvia is the real place. Latveria is the one that Doom is from.
Yes.
Yeah,
you understand-
Latveria is fictional.
You understand why I struggled.
No, yes, that is
I
very
get
much
it.
one of the more on the nose ones, without a doubt.
Mhm.
But like that's
Almost as
kind
bad as Core Rock in the DC comics.
of.
So in the MCU, it looks like our Zemo, Helmut Zemo, did not work with Nazis or Hydra.
Okay.
Which
Yeah, I remember him stealing shit from a retired Hydra goon, but that's it.
Well,
like,
it was apparently, again, I'm taking this from a fandom wiki, so grain of salt, obviously. Managed to decrypt the Hydra data leaked by Black Widow.
Mm.
Yeah.
But like he's also Sokovian, right? And like this show, like if again, if Steve Rogers and his version of Captain America, his enemies are Nazis and former zombies, Nazis like Zola and the Red Skull, it would make sense that his successor in the form of Sam Wilson is facing enemies and issues that plagued the Cold War America. So Eastern Bloc villains like, I guess Baron Zemo and like spy on spy shit with Sharon Carter.
Yeah, and you were cutting out very frequently.
Not for me.
I'm sorry.
Oh, maybe it's just
I
my
think this
thing.
might be a Jack problem.
God damn it.
But also like you have the sense you also have like Bucky Barnes in this cross. And like, this is like I don't know if this is intentional or not, probably not, but there was like how oh god, what was the name of that project? God. There post World
Something or
War
other.
I think it was like Project Paperclip or something, where post World War II,
Oh yeah, that.
a bunch of Nazi scientists were essentially integrated into
Yes,
American
yes, I do
society.
remember that.
And so like in many ways, this acceptance of Bucky as either a former Nazi or as a victim of Nazi trauma, so is also something that post-war America was dealing with, right? Like how does someone grok with an individual like Bucky whose past is interlaced with the horrendous shit that the Nazis pulled?
There's
Right.
also the whole issue of agency with Bucky and how he's not really had any
Right,
for
and like
decades.
Oh yeah.
that's why Bucky as another character, in the story, is in many ways like meant to be an equivalent, right? Like in the same ways that Sam and Isaiah Bradley are black men whose bodies are not their own, who because of the fact that they are black were denied their own humanity due to white supremacy.
Speaking of Sam and his body, though, I do appreciate that Sam doesn't take the super soldier serum at the end.
Yes,
because him asserting his agency in that regard.
it's his choice, right? Like it is a choice for him in the way it wasn't for Bradley.
Yeah.
And like the way it wasn't a choice for Bucky.
Yeah.
Right? Like Bucky is the other side of white supremacy where an individual like a white man, someone who even before his transformation into the Winter Soldier was the American ideal, like patriotic, good soldier boy, honest, hardworking, traditionally handsome. But even with all of that, he still has his agency and bodily autonomy taken away from him by white supremacists. And the show is tracking the ways in which white supremacy affects not only black people in America, but also white people in the form of Bucky and later, as we see, John Walker. again, a thing that
It's funny, the whole. You can also. I'm sure this is something you were going to bring up anyway, but John Walker as a foil to Bucky, in that they both
Sorry.
went in similar directions but made opposite choices.
I mean, like, yes, it is like they were both victims of white supremacy, but and like when confronted with that, they make they make oppositional choices, right? They do that, where Bucky chooses to do like essentially do like begin the work of anti-racism, whatever that means in the form of the MCU, whereas John Walker goes the Ron DeSantis route of fuck it all, I'm white, I'm better. I cannot accept that I was wrong because of my white supremacy, because if I accept that I'm wrong, then everything I believe and everything I've built myself up to be is false, and I cannot stand to bear that crack because there's nothing underneath.
Yeah, funny enough, the social psychology course I took last semester had an entire unit on cognitive dissonance, and that's like John Walker's kind of a textbook case of moving the goalposts when faced with cognitive dissonance.
Jack Ramel, do you guys have what year the show came out? I don't remember. I didn't know it's like 2020. But
2021.
Which show?
Yeah, Falcon.
2021.
So like we are immediately with the George Floyd protests. Immediately.
Yeah, the timing is a bit weird, isn't it? Bit not weird. It's awkward.
Well, it's on the nose, right? And then we have this national
production was it's all about production as well. So filming started 2019, and then it got fucked in terms of the pandemic, I think.
Right.
Yep. Both it and WandaVision were done with their like major production stuff in 2019, but post-production got absolutely railed by COVID.
So the production actually ended up taking, I think, like basically a year.
Right, and by that point, we had all American discourse had included had come to include terms like anti-racism, critical race theory. What does it mean to be what does it mean to start to dismantle the systems of racism and systemic racism, and what what are the ways in which blackness in America has systemically fucked over people, and the ways in which white supremacy hurts everyone, not just BIPOC folk. And it's like it is in many ways both apropos that the show comes out when it does, but also very poor timing, right? Because pre-George Floyd, this show comes out in conversation with the George Zimmerman and the Ferguson riots, the Ferguson protests.
Yeah. Oh God.
That is what this show is in discussion with, and it is in discussion. It is trying to speak to an America, at least in my estimation, that is still trying to grapple with and understand what happened in the Ferguson protests, and the ways in which the rise of Black Lives Matter and these social movements, and the ways in which we have failed to learn from it and have started to. But with George Floyd, the conversation progressed, and the show was too late in production to include that. And I think it suffers for being late to the It suffers for being late to a conversation it was trying to have.
It was outpaced by current events,
Yes.
So
basically.
on a slightly more cynical note, I would prefer to phrase it as it was late to a conversation that it was going to pretend to try to have.
Well, so I agree with you, but I also believe that like what I want to believe that the writers in the room, that the people who are doing production, like the actual people doing the labor of production here, the writers, the editors, the director, and the actors themselves are all trying to have an earnest conversation about this, and it is mostly producer executives coming in and like trying to tone it down.
Meddling.
And we've seen that with Disney. That is a thing Disney does. Rip Owl House. But all that to say, like, I think it is important to understand that, like, Disney franchises like Star Wars and Marvel, while they don't have the same depth, at least in the major productions, they do at least hint at these deeper, more visceral conversations that are trying to be had.
I can agree with that view of things. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, the big issue is that this show exists in like a very political space that it was unfortunately about a year or two late to the conversation to really properly comment on in a topical way, and thus it feels kind of very dissonant to the times. Is what I'm getting for what you're saying, again.
Yeah, and it's not only that, right? It's also.
I know it's not only that, but that's part of it.
Well, yes, no. What I was going to say is that there's also uh, something to consider in that the place where the place and time where this show happens and takes place and is set is one that is different enough from reality that it comes with all of the upsides and downsides of a more allegorical take on this. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
It's like, you know how fantasy version of X is never equivalent to X, and that has both upsides and downsides, and I feel like Falcon and the Winter Soldier has a similar scenario. Because
yeah.
while yes, it is not strictly like one-to-one with real world events, and because of that there are some places where it feels a bit hand wavy, but there are other places where it feels probably more easily digestible than if it was one-to-one. Did any of that make any sense?
Yes, it did. I can agree with that. Right? Like, so, like, part of, like, I can, yes. Because, like, I mean, I'm on a Star Wars kick, but, like, the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy, right? Like, George Lucas, when he creates Star Wars, the original trilogy, and then when he returns to make the prequel trilogy, both of those trilogies were set, like, were meant to discuss, like, meant to kind of encapsulate the ways in which America as a military power is sliding into fascism, sliding into the same is like the original
Well-
trilogy is a criticism of Vietnam in the way that the prequel trilogy becomes this criticism of the war on terror, and the
Now,
rise of American fascism.
I
But like,
do honestly find myself agreeing with you, but I must confess that there is a significant part of me that does not want to give George Lucas anywhere near that amount of credit.
I mean, if you like, if you listen
I'm pretty
to
sure he's
interviews,
explicitly stated in interviews that
Yes.
he based
yes,
the prequel trilogy on Bush and the War on Terror.
yes, this is yes.
I can
Fuzzy,
acknowledge it. I don't have to like it, simply because
Um,
he's had some problems.
Fuzzy Austin Walker does another podcast called A More Civilized Age, in which he and a few others discuss the prequel movies and the ways in which, like, kind of the context around that, with and the ways like George Lucas has talked about those movies. It's a good listen. But you have like you were saying, but those movies, they're not one to one though, right? Like the fact that you are like, I don't want to admit that George Lucas did that is proof of that, right? Like Lucas did it, but he left enough reasonable doubt that you don't have to accept it.
Oh, that's not the part I took issue with.
Oh.
The part I took issue with is more that like accepting that George Lucas might not just be a moron.
I mean,
He's not a moron. He's just not as good at directing, writing as he thought he was.
we can discuss Star Wars another day. I have opinions.
We can, yeah.
Wow, we haven't done a
But-
Star Wars podcast. That seems like a mistake.
It's because you've never watched the Star Wars movies.
Watched them. I just haven't watched them in like fucking forever.
You can change that,
Also,
but-
I don't have to be on.
That's true. He doesn't.
Leave me out. I'm happy with that.
But like, or even going to like more modern media, right? Steven Universe and the Owl House, they are not one to one, but like they are discussing the ways in which trauma and generational trauma are talked about and handled, right? And like
Oh,
they
give
don't
me a second.
explicitly say that, but they talk about it. That is their central thesis, and they are so like much like Captain Captain Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and
Falcon.
I said what I said. And like the Star Wars trilogies, like they are in conversation with like the American geist and the American like psyche at different points, right? Steven Universe is talking to a younger generation of millennials and zennies, whereas Owl House is talking to a more mature generation, like
Well,
an
the
older
the
group.
thing is there though that Steven Universe and the Owl House. I know this is a big digression, but they approach the subject from very different angles. Because Steven Universe is from the angle of basically a power fantasy of someone who wanted to be able to get an older relative, a very tyrannical, bigoted older relative, to recognize who they are and respect them for who they are. Whereas the Owl House takes it from the approach of, yeah, this person cannot be budged because this person is a tyrannical fascist who is way too set in their ways to even consider changing themselves.
Right. And I mean, and also like that even ties into like the ways that, like the most recent Disney movies. Encanto is the one that was forefront of mind, and like Encanto, Soul, like these movies are about, generational trauma and the ways in which we confront the trauma that was inflicted upon us. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, going back to Falcon and the Winter Soldier, like Sam as a character is not is Sam is like Sam's whole arc is that he sees all of these characters. He sees Isaiah. He sees Bucky. He sees John Walker. He's like, and these three versions of what he could be, as well as the image of Steve, like like the shadow of Steve Rogers, and he has to go. What is it that I want to do? How do I make the shield my own? And that is a incredibly valid question for Sam to ask, because there, like, the question of how does he as a black man in America become the symbol of America?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what does
Especially
that
with
mean?
America has a very long and complicated history with people of color and especially black men. So yeah.
I mean,
As
it's
discussed
like
earlier.
very telling that the moment, like this is probably one of the biggest, most obvious pieces of social commentary in the series. But the moment Sam donates the shield, the American military immediately reclaims it and gives it to the blondest-haired, bluest-eyed, like
Well, yeah, I mean that
Aryan
is
soldier they can find.
that is why I call John Walker the antithesis of Bucky.
Hmm.
He is the opposing image of what white supremacy does to a white man.
Yes. And honestly, like, we got 5 really good episodes of Walker and his downward spiral. Too bad they didn't have him appear at all in the finale. It's really weird. They just kind of
Forgot
let
him.
him drop
No.
the
We're
map.
going to discuss this. We're going to discuss this because the director actually said, "Oh, I think everyone likes John Walker now." That was the goal of that was one of the goals of the show. We want to get everyone to like John Walker by the end of the season. I think we succeeded.
Oh, you sweet summer child.
No, we're not. We're not sweet summer child in this. That's just pure ignorance.
I know. It is the ignorance of no, that's mean. The child. It's more ignorant than the child, by far.
Children are pretty ignorant and, just generally awful.
I still
their
maintain that
job.
that's more ignorant than children.
Who is the direct Kari? Oh,
Kari
interesting.
Skolka.
This is the same director of The Handmaid's Tale. Interesting.
Fascinating.
That is somehow concerning.
They also did Vikings. Interesting.
Fascinating.
Oh, and they did an episode of The Punisher too. I'm just looking at their IMDb at this point.
Yeah. Honestly, like, look, if they were trying to get you to like John Walker, like, didn't do the best job. Not gonna lie.
Again, it's that element of the last time we see John Walker. Well, episode 5. We get Sam and Bucky kicking the shit out of him because he's
yes.
Gone rogue. Yes.
He's killed a surrendering prisoner in cold blood.
Yeah, again, very funny. Hilarious in hindsight, considering George Floyd.
Yeah, he gets a. The wiki is saying other than honorable discharge. Is that not just a dishonorable discharge?
It should be dishonorable discharge.
It's dishonorable discharge in all but name.
Right. Okay.
Like, he's functionally dishonorably discharged, but without that term being on his record.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
they basically just sent him away quietly.
He gets kicked out of the army. He gets stripped of the title of Captain America. He gets approached by Valentina. And then we see during the credits he's building a new shitty shield from scrap metal and his fucking war medals. And then he turns, and I feel like that, considering how sketchy DeFontaine is, I feel like you're supposed to get that, impression of, oh man, he's gonna, cause some issues.
He's gonna really do something
He's
fucked
gonna
up.
cause some issues for the heroes in the final episode. Nope, he's on their side. He just comes in, fully heroic, and that's that.
Yeah,
I really
will say
wish.
Wyatt Russell
Yeah.
did his best. He did his best.
Honestly, almost all of the actors in this show gave it their A game.
Yeah, no fault on the actor here. We are not the type of assholes who blame actors for what their characters do. Because
Unless the acting is actually bad, but I don't think Mackie
that was not the
and
case.
Wyatt Russell did bad jobs. I don't think that. I will say,
I
her
was
name?
I was more meaning in the sense of blaming the actor for, say, killing a surrendering person,
yes.
Yeah, no.
which people do for some reason.
I never understood.
Actually, are actors who would do that. So not
Yeah,
naming any
we're not
names.
gonna name names.
I mean, John Wayne for one, but
John Wayne's a whole dead other ball game, but yeah. Anyways, I do think it does merit mentioning though that John Walker's face turn is very abrupt and is not very well foreshadowed.
yes.
It's
And I
all
think
It does
Well,
not follow the
really?
trajectory of his character at that point.
well,
Because
Fuzzy,
he
what were
is
you
in the
gonna
middle
say?
of a downward spiral. Fuzzy?
did they?
Huh?
You
There you
sounded
are.
like you were saying something.
Oh no, it's not really a face turn yet, considering the fact that he's going to be in Thunderbolts, which I'm pretty
that
sure
is true.
I'm pretty sure the Marvel equivalent of the Suicide Squad,
It is.
run
A
by
little bit, kind of.
apparently
Mostly.
Harrison Ford is the new Thunderbolt Ross.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's what, as per the rumors.
Yep.
And I'm just like, Harrison, why do you do this to yourself?
Because he wants money.
Yes.
Look, Harrison does not lie about his motivations. He sees a paycheck, he's like, sure, I'll go for it. Fuck
Yeah.
it.
Unless it's Indiana Jones, in which case he just shows up to a set with the hat, the whip, and the vest, and it's just like, let's go.
Oh, he apparently told Chris Pratt at one point that, no, I am Indiana Jones, you are not, no one else will be Indiana Jones.
You know what? I can respect that.
It's an absolutely insane take, but yes, it's just like it's got very strong crosses the line twice energy.
Also, it's Harrison Ford. I'm not surprised.
He loves being Indiana Jones for some reason. I don't know.
Ah,
Well, he didn't
he's
for a
wrong.
while. He didn't for a while.
I guess he's just really nostalgic for it. I don't know. What I do know is
But yeah,
We
going
are-
back to John Walker. I found the full quote from the director about John Walker.
Oh God.
okay. Is it better or worse in context?
It's I don't think it gets any worse, but it definitely doesn't get better. I
Oh,
think
boy.
it is what it is. I wanted people to like him, and I think everybody does like him. Now they went through a period of not liking him at the beginning because he started out feeling like, wait a second, is that the guy? But then through the calibration of performance as such, we realize he's coming from a very earnest place. No matter what's going on, he really does want to be a good Cap, and he wants to do the right thing. Now, when his ego gets involved and the Dora Milaje, take him down, and he goes, "Oh my God, I'm in over my head." That sort of compels him into a conversation with Lamar, and then we realize there's a beat in there that's missing. He's actually a bit of an imposter. Yeah, I can agree with that last line.
Well,
Yeah.
well, I mean,
So parts of that
Right.
actually feel a bit accurate, honestly.
well,
Like-
there's this sense of like, this is this is a character who is the American ideal. Like John Walker is the epitome of what America is, and I think the director, like unintentionally, I might say, seems like is getting to of like, no, this is the person America's gonna like, or at the very least, this is the person that America will mythologize and fawn over, because that is what America does. America doesn't fawn over the black guy. It doesn't fawn over the guy doing the work of anti-racism. It's gonna fawn over the guy who does police brutality and then does a good thing afterwards, maybe. Like some kind of charity work.
I mean,
he
Look
seems
at-
so earnest and likable, and
look at the news story from what was it, 2-3 days ago, of that Marine fucking murdering a dude on the subway,
Yeah.
God damn.
and people
And
are
then
praising that.
The
People are
governor of New
praising
York,
that.
Governor Kathy Hochul, all but praising it.
A white
sake.
Marine murdered a black homeless man on the subway, and people are praising him
Yes.
for it.
Exactly.
What the
And-
fuck?
Like, this is, like, in many ways, this is why the quote is so much worse, because it's unintentionally correct. It's correct for the wrong reasons. Not because the show did anything right, but because it incorrectly tries to make John Walker into a hero at the end, but just can't do it in a way that's satisfying, because that is not what America does to its villains, especially villains who are white supremacists. They always, at the last second, go, "There's a kernel of a good guy in there."
I mean, part of it is just our culture of trying to see the goodness in everybody, even when there's like.
I think so. Going back to cognitive dissonance, I think this is, I forget the exact term because, as we all know, all medical terminology leaves your mind the moment you take the exam. But I believe this is the form of cognitive dissonance in which, because I think it's similar to the looking glass effect, but in reverse, in which they see enough of themselves in the bad guy that they really don't want to accept that they're a bad guy. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, going back to Star Wars, everyone thinks they're the rebels. Whether you're on the left side, like the political left or the political right, you always assume you're the rebels.
Everyone wants to be the hero of the story, and nobody wants to think that they're the villain of the story.
Except the people who do.
Except for some really odd people, yes.
You can call the racists and bigots what they are.
Well, again, they still think they're the heroes and they're in the right just because they're.
I mean,
They just think that heroes all a birth of a nation, rather than heroes all 99.999% of modern fiction.
Yeah, I mean, just because they're incredibly wrong doesn't mean they don't think that.
how many people in Star Wars discourse, like, this is a part of like the Star Wars discourse that I've heard so often, especially in like post episode 3, pre episode 7. You know, the Empire had some good points.
Oh God. No, fucking
like-
didn't.
Exactly. But like, that is part of like where America is and like where American discourse is with relation to fascism and white supremacy.
It's also just like the issue of both sidesing every single debate, because, well, there has to be at least some good in both sides of the argument, right?
Well, I mean
Right.
that is Clinton era lineal, like that's Clinton era politics. That's the third way, the the third way, end of history,
It's the golden means
neoliberalism.
fallacy.
Yes, all of that comes in like post end of Cold War.
Yeah, no. But let's get back onto the topic of the show itself, because there is some important stuff I do think we do need to address. Like the Flag Smashers and how poorly implemented they wound up being overall.
Again,
Mhm.
They were apparently a
that's
very
the
well
opposite.
liked.
I mean, that's the opposite problem of Walker, in that they tried to make them the villains, yet they had somewhat of a point.
Yeah, they did the
Well,
whole thing where they make the villain like have a point, and then they have the villain do something super unreasonable and out of left field just to make it so that it's easier to root against them.
well, the thing
Because
about
they do that a lot.
apparently the Flag Smashers were a very well liked group in the comics.
Hmm.
Oh boy.
Well, no,
Well-
because they were like not the bad. I'm not sure, but apparently they were either like.
Let me see if I can find it.
Basically, they were well done in the comics in a way that they were just not in, and apparently that made people mad.
Well-
I'm not shocked.
So let me find it.
But yeah, again, they did the whole thing where it's like the villain has a point, so we gotta make them do something super irrational and super evil just to make it clear that, hey, these are the bad guys, even though they have good points in what they're saying and what they're doing. Because that's apparently the only way to make it such that you can properly root for the heroes, I guess.
So the Flag
Logic.
Smasher. Yeah. So Flag Smasher is a single person in the comics, and they are they are an anti-nationalist person. So the first Flag Smasher, Carl Morgenthau, son of a wealthy Swiss banker turned diplomat.
Carly Morgenthau.
Mm-hmm.
They
Yep.
did the gender swap. I see.
Yes.
Yep. Not the
Um,
worst gender swap, to be fair, but like,
I have
Not
no
sure.
problem with the gender swapping.
So
yeah, it's not. It wasn't
essentially,
really an issue.
he came like the idea of Carl Morgenthau is that he believes that humanity needed to do away with the concept of countries.
It's a take that makes it's already a take that makes a certain amount of sense, but it's a take that makes so much more sense in a cosmic Marvel universe in which, you know,
So,
Well,
here's the
In
other
which
thing.
Galactus
Yeah,
exists.
here's the other thing. You know, I think that's a position. You know, making somebody like that a villain can work if they're coming at it from a
Destructive anarchist angle.
not even
Well-
that, coming at it from a position of privilege. Like they have benefited from the world that the blip created. Like they suddenly
Well-
have all this power that has been removed by the return of the old world, rather than people who are struggling to survive.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Carl Morgenthau, as I said, the son of a wealthy Swiss banker turned diplomat.
Super privileged, super wealthy. They could have done that with Carly, but no, they made it. They decided that hey, this person who is anti-establishment has to be from someone who has fallen through the cracks, who has been fucked over by society, rather than someone who has benefited immensely from social disruption and wants to return to that thing which benefited them. So
And
much
I mean-
potential in that idea.
Flag Smashers are mainly supposed to be like, we want to return to a status quo prior to the blip.
Mm-hmm.
But like, what does that mean, right? Like, what is?
well, you see, there's the thing is like they seem to have pretty blatantly anti-immigrant bend in the series in the show.
Well, I mean, that is always the case with groups like this, right? Like, anytime you have a anti-nationalist group or like some kind of like I guess like this armed vigilante mob, oftentimes they will turn to anti-immigration. They will
Yeah,
turn to
because it's
anti-immigrant.
easy targets. It is the simple targets.
Yes. I mean, New York in the wake of the Irish potato famine and the influx of Irish immigrants, or the Western United
Nina.
States. The Western United States when Chinese immigrants started coming over, and the Chinese Exclusion Acts were passed, right? Like you have all of these forces, all of the time.
Yeah, no, it ranges from the No Irish Need Apply to the Chinese Exclusion Act to all the shit going on with Mexican and Latin American immigrants nowadays.
I mean, Japanese internment camps.
Japanese internment.
Um,
The whatchamacallit, the Muslim Man by
right.
El Presidente.
And now the don't say gay, anti-trans bills.
Not gonna lie, I really hope that the Mouse rails DeSantis on that. Not gonna lie. Lesser of two evils.
I feel like that's very much dependent on which one of those evils is currently knocking on your front door, but that's a separate conversation, I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
let's not go too far into that though. But yes,
more to the point, there's one other thing I want to make sure that we touch on before we move on. Is at least at the beginning, Bucky is in therapy, and I think that is something that isn't touched upon very well in any of these stories. Like it's not done well here, but it's at least touched on, which is something.
Yeah.
The fact that
you do get the sense that Bucky is spending most of the series grieving and just dealing with his PTSD as well.
Grieving and processing trauma, yes.
I mean, this is the first time he's really gotten a chance to, leave that sort of soldier life behind. You know, before he was always, stuck in the middle of something, be it, Avengers stuff or, the closest I would say is his time in Wakanda, but even then that was, probably quite a stressful period for him.
And I mean,
because he was being deprogrammed, yeah.
I mean, he's still also fundamentally a man out of time. And the only other person who could even closely understand him
did abandon him. Yeah.
And Steve is dead.
No, he's on the moon. Steve is on the moon.
Okay.
Honestly, we still don't know what Steve's deal is.
Yeah.
He's talking to Uatu.
He's not available anymore. Yeah.
Look, he's talking to Uatu in heaven, alright? Uatu took him out behind the shed, and he's in a farm upstate. It's fine.
Alright, really bring back the Ace Attorney joke.
Yes. But, in many ways, Bucky is in complete isolation, right? There's that scene in the beginning where he's at, this... I want to say it's... Oh god, it's like it's like an Asian run. I think it's a Korean bar or a Japanese bar.
I think it's meant to be Japanese.
Yes,
he ordered sake, I believe, so that's Japanese.
And it did have the waving cat, which I believe is generally considered a Japanese thing.
Every single Asian restaurant I've been to has one of those, so I don't think that's
a Chinese restaurant had one that I went to. So.
Fair enough.
Remember, it's a restaurant in America, which means they have to Americanize it.
Right. Mm-hmm. But the point I'm getting to is he interacts with the younger, the bartending girl, the young bartender, and he has a good conversation with her, but the person he truly connects with is her grandfather. Because that is the one person in the room who understands him, because they are from the same point in time.
There's also one thing that I feel that not enough people remember. Steve spent all that time frozen. Bucky didn't. Bucky was conscious and awake and like doing horrible things for a lot of it. So
He doesn't
Yeah.
like his mind was wiped, but like the idea is that like
But it's not
he-
wiped anymore. It's been unwiped, and I think that's the thing is that he's like,
he's
Yeah.
remembered. Yes.
yes. Because
There's also-
I remember wasn't the plot point that he killed that man's son?
Yes.
Yes.
And he's trying to apologize to him for it. And
But he can't do it.
yeah.
But like
I
the
think he
point, like,
does go through with it at some points.
He goes through with it at the end, I think.
but the idea is that it's not someone like Sam or the bartender that he gets along with. It's this old man. Because that's who Bucky is. He's just an old man
Hmm.
who has seen too much and doesn't know how to deal.
Yep.
You might even say he's too old for this.
He's too old for
Crap.
this shit. Yeah. But
Lethal Weapon.
I mean, in all seriousness, though, like there is this, like that is also the condition of the American soldier, right? It
Mhm.
is you turn yourself into this weapon of war, and then when you're
And
done,
then you find yourself a stranger when you get back home.
you're a stranger to everyone but another soldier.
And also you're
Yep.
thrown away, i.e. like by your best friend Steve.
Just it's a very alienating experience for anyone.
And I mean, like we get that with Sam, we get that with Isaiah, we even get that with Steve a little bit too.
Yeah.
Like the only one who isn't thrown away is John Walker.
Even then, he gets a bit discarded before he gets picked up by Valentina.
But like it's a slap on the wrist in compared to what Bucky and Sam and Isaiah went through.
Oh, absolutely.
Again, because he is a white man who towed the line.
He's I think an even more important way of describing him is he's a white man who has accepted the system
Mm-hmm.
and does not want to change it, really.
Right? He's not challenging the status quo.
Yes, he is a white man who is very comfortable with the status quo, and the only times he was like really having trouble was when the status quo was starting to change.
And the only reason
Yeah.
he's even the only reason functionally he's on trial is because the white the court of public opinion needs a scapegoat. That's
And
the only
honestly, like what he does is awful, but like the scapegoating of him for basically going on a basically being under the influence and losing his shit in a fit of rage and grief is like you see that kind of thing a lot with
It's not
a
an
lot of other.
excuse, though. We should
It's not
make
an
that clear.
excuse. That's not an
But I mean-
excuse, but it does explain his actions, and it's like these circumstances don't allow for mitigating circumstances to be
I
or
mean-
nuance to really be utilized in the court of public opinion. They will automatically so the powers that be will be like, hey, you went off the rails, we're not going to contextualize this at all for anybody, we're just going to let them paint you in the worst possible light because you're expendable to us.
I mean, in the real world, like, the guy, like you mentioned, the case in New York, the guy who did the killing is a former Marine. And then, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And I mean, the George Floyd cops, right, like, they were all sent to the fire for this, and like, the main police officer, I can't remember his name, but fuck that guy, like, he didn't want to change the system. The only reason the only reason he was convicted was because people wanted justice.
And
And
people
like
are
that-
very persistent about getting justice.
right, but like the courts, the lawyers, none of them wanted to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And like in many ways, like that is what we see with John Walker is like none of the actors want to do it. And by actors I mean the characters like in the play of the court right at that scene. But it's the audience, it's the media. They want this to happen. And they must play their roles.
And so John Walker's bosses are more than comfortable with throwing him under the bus to appease that. Because even though he does toe the line, and even though he gets a slap on the wrist for it, he is still expendable to them.
Right, because he is fundamentally not he is not capital. He is labor.
Which, it's an interesting conversation that I had with my that was part of a course I took where it was about social change, but he brought up a very interesting point, which I think many people might find controversial, but I do believe holds some water at least.
Mm-hmm.
Is the idea that all forms of bigotry were created by the institution as a sort of camouflage to disguise the fact that the core driving force of the injustice of the world is wealth inequality.
Yes, 100%.
And classism.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like that is the reason why the Jewish people were always scapegoated throughout the Middle Ages into the modern era. That is why the Holocaust even happens in the first place. That is why the Roma and the Romani are treated as they are. That is exactly why Indians and South Asians are treated as they are throughout the Middle East and South Africa. That is why, the Japanese treated the Korean and Chinese people so poorly. That is why the current the current Communist Party treats any non-Han Chinese the way they do with genocide or cultural genocide is for all of these reasons. Is because they are trying to maintain this sense of status quo for the state of capital and keep the populace focused on people other than the ones with authority. And that is why people
Speaking of that, actually, speaking of maintaining the status quo, that is actually a part of the dissonance that a lot of people find with a lot of superhero media. Because a lot of it is about not changing the status quo, but keeping the status quo as it is, and protecting the status quo from outside threats.
And Horikoshi is a coward.
Honestly, I think Falcon and the Winter Soldier does a lot better than most shows on that front by addressing that there is a need for change in the status quo.
Right.
It doesn't do it well, but it does do it.
As a coward, there's a lot of options there, and you cut out for me.
I said Koshi.
Or Koshi.
Oh, yes. Hiraka. Okay, yes. No, yes, he is.
But yeah, my point is that, for all its flaws, at least this show does address that. There are systemic issues, and there does need to be change. It doesn't do it well. Not very well at all, but it does address that.
I'm surprised that, again, that you haven't read Jujutsu Kaisen simply because it is very much something I think you'd enjoy. Because it also does the thing of very much not really wanting to keep the status quo. That's kind of the driving premise of the series.
I kind of stopped reading Trump around the same time I stopped watching anime.
Understandable, to be honest.
But
yes,
this show is the epitome of. I'm gonna see if I can copy this link.
I'd say well-meaning, but very deeply flawed in terms of this show.
This is what this show is in a nutshell.
Oh boy, what is it?
That is the show in GIF.
Yeah.
Yep. It's something.
It's this show doesn't set out to be, nor does it succeed to be, but it's something. Right? And like
It tries
there's
at some points. It does try, but at the same time, like a lot of it's addressing issues that lie at the core of its themes is just not sufficient.
I mean, the same way in which like you can say like the Clone Wars cartoon tries really hard at times to humanize the clones and like really dig at the ways in which they are dehumanized by the Republic and they're functionally the same as droids and like all of that. The Clone Wars cartoon really tries, but ultimately does not reach that
It's still
height.
meant to sell toys.
Yes.
Even if it does do the theming and the storytelling very well compared to like 99% of children's content. It's still at the end of the day meant to sell toys. Which is unfortunate because again, it really tries. It doesn't it's honestly like the second best Star Wars thing at selling that conceit to you of, hey, this is actually some deep thematic stuff. Pay attention to this, please.
Right. But, you know, that's where we are.
Yeah. At the end of the day, like, this one has a lot more political meat than most MCU stuff.
It is
And-
definitely the most overtly political.
Yes. Like, all the other MCU stuff that actually has any theme to it does not go into political direction with its theming.
Like,
WandaVision is about dealing with grief. Loki is about identity and dealing with your past sins. This, Falcon the Winter Soldier, is much more politically themed than anything else Marvel has produced.
right.
And that's
I mean,
that's sort of the issue because they only give it 6 episodes, and
It really should have been
they've,
8.
they've
It
got
really should have been 8.
and they've
Or
got
at the very
to they've
least-
got to shove their action movie plot in there as well, which takes up time.
right. And that's why we get the unsatisfying reveal of Sharon Carter and all of that. But like,
That's yeah.
I mean, like,
no.
and like WandaVision, you know, starts to hint at like this idea of like, you know, like the idea of American military power being used to destroy Eastern Europe and the ways in which the American war machine has devastated like the third world and the global south.
But Don Cheadle was barely in this show.
Yes. Well,
You get it? It's War Machine.
yeah, we're seeing. Yep. Uh huh.
Mm.
And like, I didn't watch Hawkeye, but you know,
Hawkeye is fun. It's not really deep in any way.
but you know, like, She-Hulk is talking about feminism and the ways in which, like, what does it mean to like, what is the feminine identity, and what does it mean, like, functionally, what is the question of what is womanhood?
Ms. Marvel is very much about immigrant identity and dealing with the consequences of having been an immigrant multiple times over.
And then,
Uh,
like, and very specifically,
And
what does it mean to be,
cultural.
what does it mean to be a Muslim immigrant in the United States post 2001?
Yeah. Like, all these. And Moon Knight is very much about identity and just.
Mental identity,
Sure.
mental illness. Yeah, identity and mental illness.
Like, all these shows have, except for Hawkeye, which is just kind of there,
There.
have
Yes,
very
like,
strong
yeah,
themes running through them.
Look, Hawkeye just being kind of there is very on theme for.
But yeah,
Look,
like,
someone had to say it.
all of these shows, they have very strong theming, but I feel like each and every one of them could have done with at least one more episode to flesh out the ideas they were putting forward.
Mm.
Like,
There's a kernel in there, right? Like you can see where the intent starts, right? Like someone came in and was like, I want to tell a story about this, and
Yeah.
then And then when we get to the show, you can see that kernel still there, but you also see the ways in which Disney and Marvel had to sand that down to fit the mold. And that is why people are so tired. Like, I think part of
Just
what
so
makes
sized.
this era of Marvel, this was a phase is the term, right? Phase is like so maligned is partially because like the theming is so clear. Like you can see the kernels so clearly, but it is so sanded down that it's frustrating.
It's like you have this absolutely beautiful, beautiful emerald. Has all these little imperfections here and there, but it is just absolutely gorgeous. And then instead of like chipping away a little bit at those imperfections to make this nice diamond shape, they instead smooth it down until it's just like this weird oval shape instead. And it's like it could have been just something very, very distinctive and unique and interesting, but instead it's just very rounded and bland.
And that is that is the fault. That is the fault of Phase 4. Right?
Yeah.
That is why Phase 4 has fundamentally failed to capture an audience. Because it's so sanded down and like people were tired. And this like as like people
interesting ideas at the cores of basically everything in Phase 4.
right, like,
But,
I mean, like with with the pandemic and like everyone kind of going through this trauma together, there was this and like the trauma of Trump and the Trump era of politics and like this new rise of fascism and you know fake news and all this shit. Like it's what's the word I want to use here?
Exhausting.
No, what is Forspoken not? Not serious, but
Campy?
no,
Dreary.
earnest, I guess.
Hmm.
Like there's this desire for earnest media, right? Like pre-pandemic, Forspoken would have landed. Pre-pandemic, Marvel landed. But in like the wake of the pandemic, in the wake of like years of never knowing what to believe in media, everyone making a joke of everything, there's this desire for something honest and genuine. And I think that is the flaw of Phase 4 and like why Star Wars failed, right? Like that is why the sequel trilogy flopped as hard as it did.
I think that's also why Andor is doing so well.
Yeah, because it's it's honest. It is
It's
saying
excellent too.
And I mean like that is also why Mandalorian season 1 and like seasons 1 through 3 did really well because it was also honest about what it was. It didn't joke about it. It was just here's what I am. This is why, The Last of Us has worked and succeeded as a show. Where, something like The Rings of Power or God, what was it? Another show that just came out. The Halo show. Like those fundamentally failed because they weren't earnest. Because they were trying to chase this image of something and try to fit into a veneer. Whereas The Last of Us, Andor, they're trying to talk about something that's honest and genuine and are coming at it from a genuine place. And they're taking themselves as seriously as they need to be to tell that story. And, like, say what you will about, like, Marvel fatigue. I think if these shows were better, like, if these shows had, like, same genuine quality, the same level of earnestness as Andor, I think Phase 4 would have done significantly better than it did.
Honestly, part of the reason that specifically Ms. Marvel and WandaVision were so well received was because of how earnest those were compared to most of the rest of Marvel's TV lineup in Phase 4.
Right, like She-Hulk is the third closest, but even then, like it's just like
That one also had issues that some of which were not its fault. Some of
Right,
which were the
but, like-
fault of assholes. But
right.
we'll not get into that.
But like more to the point, like right, like you said, like WandaVision was genuine up until a point. Miss Marvel,
Yeah.
genuine up until a point. You know, this is a show that's genuine up until a point. It just hits that point a lot earlier, and so is worse for it.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I've talked a lot.
No, it's
No,
fine.
no, that's why we have
again,
you on the show.
you have a lot of really interesting insights onto this, so it's very good to get your insight on it. And honestly, like, I'm not saying the show is bare bones because the show is not bare bones.
I mean, the fact that we
But-
talked about it like this for this much to this like quality of depth for what 6 episodes for a mini series says a
Mhm.
lot about what like the thematic meat on it. It just doesn't do much with that meat.
Yeah.
Again, it's part. I think part of it is that they are trying to cover so many bases here. They are trying to cover Sam's experience as a black man, maybe having to represent a country that historically and still now doesn't treat black people in general, not just black men, black women, and black
Black
non-binary
children.
people and black children, does not treat them at all well. You've got that aspect. You've got the aspect of the flag smashers and trying to establish that world building. Because again, this is the bar Spider-Man, Far From Home, which again didn't really go into the issues
I
surrounding.
mean, No Way Home?
No, Far From Home.
Yeah, Far From Home does the blip.
Yeah, Far From Home is after the blip.
Hmm.
Far From Home sort of addresses it, but also doesn't a lot. WandaVision doesn't, cover the blip at all. This is the first time they're really covering the effects of the blip.
Hmm.
So you've got that aspect. You've got, you've got John Walker's whole fucking shtick of, apparently turning into a bad guy and then a good guy and all that shit. And then as I said, you've got this action movie plot of, coming through with the flag smashers in general, not even, talking about what they're actually doing. I'm more talking about the super soldier serum that is
Right.
also running through.
Like this corporate espionage, like Cold War style spy craft.
Yeah. I mean, these are 4 pretty fucking big plot lines that honestly could be their own show, let alone
I mean, they
separate
often
things.
are.
Yeah.
They often are.
Yeah.
Let alone being themes all together and storylines all together in one 6-episode show. Yes, the episodes were, I think, somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour, but it's still a lot to cover. And as a result,
compare this to like again, The Last of Us like TV show. Like they did a good job in like very few episodes, but those episodes were like movie length.
Well, the first one was movie length. The rest of them were still in the ballpark about 45 minutes to an hour.
Well, like wasn't episode 3 the one with Nick Offerman like an hour
Yeah,
and a
that
half
one
or
was about
something?
50. No, that was the first episode only.
I
The
don't-
third episode was like 55 minutes, I think. I can look right now.
But yeah, the point is it just didn't get enough time to really cover these themes in the sort of detail that was needed. I think all of us would have happily watched all 6 episodes being about Sam actually trying to, figure this out on his own. No flag smashes, no Zemo, no bullshit of any kind. Just, him actually coming
so
to
neither of
terms
us are right.
with,
Yeah.
So
coming to terms
Um,
with this, potential role change.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, a show of just Sam having to giving up the shield, and then the whole series being about him getting the shield back
Mm.
would have
Mhm.
been fascinating.
Yeah.
Because it would have been a show about what does it mean for the ways in which black people have to fight harder
Mm.
for the same symbols that are given.
Mm.
For that same level of recognition and respect that
Right.
any white man is basically given by default.
Right.
I mean,
And
that's
the
the
ways
thing.
in which
I liked Zemo in this show, but he doesn't
he's
need to be
fundamentally
here.
Not in the
unnecessary.
show.
Yeah, he doesn't need to be here.
Yeah. No.
Like if the
Again,
he really
villain if the villain of the show was just John Walker
Mm.
and we sat with that would have been a great show.
Mm.
Yeah. And look, even if they wanted to give him his little redemption moment, make him see the error of his ways, you still could have gotten him as a villain for most of the show out of that. Like you
Again,
could
I
have.
I don't think he should even have this moment here. He doesn't need this moment here. If he's gonna
No.
be in what is it, Thunderbolts?
Yeah.
That should have been
Which is basically Marvel's version of Suicide Squad, if I'm understanding right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Kind
Yeah.
of sort of ish.
Yeah, have that realization there, where he's meeting, other fucked up people. He goes, then I was included in this. That probably
Yes.
says something
Yeah.
about me that's not very good. I should maybe work
Yeah.
on these issues.
Fun
something
fact,
like that.
Fun fact, the leader of the Thunderbolts in the comics is Baron Zemo.
No.
Again,
I'm really annoyed with the team lineup they have in they announced for the movie because it's like, why?
Like, I just want to imagine that moment in like the first. Is it a movie or is it a show? I'm really not up to date on this.
Movie. It's a movie.
Okay, first opening scene. Like, all right, gang, why don't you introduce yourself? Hi, I'm Baron Zemo. I nearly ended the Avengers. Right.
Have it be if you're leaning into it as a fucking Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, that's funny. I like
Yeah.
that bit.
Oh, that would be funny. Oh, also, quick aside, I looked it up, and you were half right again. Episode 3 of Last of Us is an hour 15.
Okay. By the way, this is the original Thunderbolts lineup, and I think this comic is hilarious.
But it's batshit insane. Completely nuts. But yeah,
Again, the leader of the Masters of Evil. If they actually call that, and Walker's just there, just like, I'm a good guy though, aren't I?
No.
to be fair, I
I-
don't think we've ever had
Oh.
comic book villains in movie be so card-carryingly evil.
Yeah, again, just have him have that realization over the course of the movie instead of shoving it in at the end of Falcon and Winter Soldier because you need the white guy to see the error of his ways. No, you don't need him to see the error of his ways in that show. You can
If you want to
have him.
see the error of his,
You can even have him
there were better
help.
ways.
Yeah, you can even have him help Sam and Bucky because he hates the Flag Smashers. Like, you don't
Right.
need to have him have that heroic moment that he has in that final episode. No, he's just in this to fuck the Flag Smashers up.
Yeah, because they killed his best friend. Which another trope I'm not fond of.
Oh, no, that was
Bridging the
bad.
black guy
Yeah.
to give the white guy motivation.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's awful. We haven't even touched on that.
Maybe he was a mercy with a name like Battlestar. He was never going to get respect for that.
No, he was not.
Bucky just walked the fuck away after hearing that one.
which is funny.
That was funny.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I feel like we've been talking about so many like the really deep themes in this, and I also kind of want to point out that this show is really funny, especially with Sam and Bucky interacting.
Look,
It's very funny.
I'm gonna be straight up with you. The biggest piece of cowardice in this show is not letting them bang.
Yes,
I mean,
but also-
apparently there were supposed to be hints that Bucky might be bi. I was like, those hints were crumbs. Those are supposed to be hints.
I mean, the fact.
Come on.
Like,
We've connected the
the fact-
dots. You haven't connected shit.
I mean,
I've connected them.
all of the TikTokers that I follow and like Marvel content creators that I follow were all just like, yeah, of course Bucky gets invited to the cookout. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Again, and
Motherfucker
that's a really sweet moment for Bucky, just getting to mess around with like Sam's nephews, like
Right,
Yeah.
and like it is a humanizing moment for him, and it's really good. And like Bucky has this moment, like this. There is this moment of, if in another life, Bucky could have.
yeah. In
I
in those,
really like Bucky, honestly.
yeah,
He,
in
he
those
doesn't get the respect he deserves.
in those moments you do get those hints of what he was like in that first, what is it, throughout
Yep,
that
the
first Captain America movie. What he was before all the trauma. I'd
Right.
also like to say, because I haven't had a chance to say it yet, Sebastian Stan looks so much better with the short hair.
Yes.
I'm sorry, he does.
You're right. You're just objectively correct.
Like, character-wise, I get why he had the long hair, but no, the short hair just works so much better.
Mhm,
Mm.
mhm.
But yeah, what point were we making before we got distracted?
I mean, Bucky, like, just Bucky as a whole is like, I mean, like, the show is smart and funny and good, but is let down by the fact that it's a Marvel show.
Again,
The
okay,
costuming is on point.
okay,
I will say the costuming is on point.
yeah, I will
That
add
Captain
to
America
my
outfit is fucking amazing.
Yeah, I will add to my previous statement. The show would have been so much better if it had been focused on, Sam's battle with, being Black Captain America, that whole thing. We lost somebody.
I
Yes,
think it's
Fuzzy.
fuzzy.
Fuzzy. He did say he had an out. So, So Sam's whole thing, and then Bucky's healing from trauma. Those two should have been the central focuses of the show.
We
Mhm.
were denied a buddy comedy.
Yes.
We got so close to it at some points too. We had some good elements.
I mean,
The therapy session, the joint therapy
the
session was
therapy
so
session
good.
is so funny.
We were denied. I am angry about this.
That conversation from the trailer about Avenger level threats, the big three. Like,
Yes.
that is just so the epitome of the chemistry that Sebastian Stan and Anthony Mackie have with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we get a lot of it. We do get quite a bit of it, but we just don't get as much as maybe we should have. In favor of, no offense to the actor, a bland white guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, the what's his name? The soldier that Sam hung out with in like the first episode or two. He just disappears,
Yeah.
and he was I think
Oh, Joaquin?
yeah, Latino.
Yeah, he is. He's going to be in the New World Order as New Falcon, because
Okay,
he was in the comic.
cool, interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we're sort of coming to an end here.
Yes.
I mean,
We talked a lot about the thematics of the show and often how it often failed to live up to them. But
I mean, what I
I
will
do think
say is it was also nice to see Batroc back. He was a fun villain.
Yes.
oh, that was fun. Yeah.
Because again,
This is a show.
it provides that really nice opponent for Sam as not a super soldier.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, in the end, it tried to juggle too many plates with not enough time, and came at some of them from the wrong angle.
Right. It is. It is. Yes.
And again, I think the issue is that okay, I've remembered a point I was thinking about. Like they've discussed doing a season 2, but the focus is very much more on the new Captain America movie.
Yeah.
Mm.
There
And
is a. Yes.
and it's like this Marvel's like need to release movies instead of TV shows.
Yeah. No, literally only three TV shows actually took advantage of the episodic format.
Mm.
Everything else felt just like an extended movie.
Um,
The only ones that actually took advantage of being episodic were WandaVision, What If, and She-Hulk, and that's it.
I mean, I don't mind the way that Falcon Winter Soldier, went about it. Obviously, it should have been longer, but
Yeah.
it gave imagine if they tried to do this shit in a fucking movie, like a two and a half hour movie. Like that would have been even worse.
Oh, absolutely.
But the point is that they rushed to that conclusion of, oh, Sam is now Captain America, so we can get this new Captain America New World Order movie. Instead of doing, all right, Falcon Winter Soldier, this is a show that's going to have a couple of seasons. First season is going to cover Sam and Bucky's development. Second season is going to cover the actual Flag Smashers, Zemo plot, that sort of stuff.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it does feel like a lot of plots just awkwardly smooshed together, doesn't it?
Yeah, like. So I think that there's an issue there, definitely.
Right.
Again, the director Scotland apparently said that she felt she had been able to do everything she wanted in the 6 episodes.
I don't believe a word that woman
I call
says.
bullshit.
Like,
I
come
call
on!
absolute bullshit.
Come on, surely not. Bullshit.
You needed at least 2 more episodes. Oh, welcome back, Fuzzy.
Hey, Fuzzy.
Show are we talking about?
Still Falcon Winter Soldier.
Apparently this director is, weird.
Full of shit.
I went the less blunt route there, but you aren't entirely wrong.
I like to be wrong. It's my favorite thing to be.
But,
Other than not.
yeah. But yeah, it's. But yeah, I think we are coming to an end here. So to conclude, a decent to good series, especially the good parts were good. It's just let down by its inability to really commit to some of its deeper themes.
Right.
And its need to fit the resolution to all these themes and storylines into one 6-episode series.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So unless any of y'all have any closing statements as well.
I mean, I've said my piece, and I think
Yeah,
Ben
I think-
mostly has.
I think my big takeaway from Falcon and the Winter Soldier is that I should probably be happy that it exists at all.
Hmm.
Because that in and of itself is a step in the right direction. I just wish it was more.
Hmm. Yeah, I can definitely get that. You know, we got to start somewhere, and maybe as the MCU goes on, we'll get more and more stuff like this. It's unlikely, but you know, maybe Disney will push for it in an effort to piss off DeSantis more.
Who
Who
the
knows?
fuck knows?
I mean, look,
That would be funny.
if this leads to a more LGBTQ friendly era for Disney, go for it. Like that will work
Honestly,
for me.
Disney
It'd be
is actually
funny.
been a proponent for LGBT rights for a lot longer than most big companies.
It would be
Ironically
really
enough.
funny if it was like, I don't know. There's something funny about if this is what gets the Owl House uncanceled.
The Owl House Lost episodes coming to you soon.
I mean,
The Owl
they
House,
could
Owl House, the Hootie story.
I mean, they could do a spin-off based on, Ida's generation in school. And that would piss off DeSantis, because Rain's going to be there.
Owl House,
Even the
the
writer's strike is right now.
Owl House, the Hootie Chronicles.
Oh, God. I want to know more, and I don't want to know more about Hootie.
Look, I would watch.
Honestly, see, I think it's nicer to not know more because the unknown is so much more terrifying
Yes.
than anything a writer
It's
can.
fertile ground for speculation.
I
And non-
agree. Blank spaces are sometimes better than filled in maps.
Yeah.
I always hate it when creators just go out of their way to answer every single possible question that everyone has ever even thought of ever. It's like, leave some space for speculation.
Mm-hmm.
Leave some
Yeah.
space for thinking.
Yeah, but I also don't like it when creators just don't answer any questions.
Yeah,
You gotta find a middle ground. You gotta
Dana did
what
a
was
good
that?
job, I think.
Yeah,
Dana did a good job, I think.
she did.
You gotta find a middle ground, but I do think it is important to not answer every question, but also to answer some questions. Yeah.
So yeah, I think we can wrap this up now. So thank you everybody for watching. Hopefully you have enjoyed us going in depth on the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. In terms of future stuff, Saturday is probably now going to be a gaming stream. Sunday we should be fine to go back to D&D.
Fingers crossed.
Tuesday, fingers crossed, we'll be going back to Arcade Spirits. And then next Thursday, Tales of Arise. And hopefully,
Yes.
hopefully we'll be able to rescue Zephyr alive and well.
I'm sure
Yep.
he's just fine.
Yeah.
And the next podcast we'll be doing will be that Saturday, and that's what we're doing, the Anime 2022 tier list. That'll be fun.
Oh, yeah. So again, thank you everybody for watching. Please do give us a follow here on Twitch and on Twitter at storytime_net. And otherwise, we hope to see you on Saturday for some gaming. Good night.
Bye bye.
All right.
Later.